Hello, hello, my hip dudes. Today we're going back to the 90s. Why? Because my friend Ducko, who works here at Galaxy Video, told me to review Mighty Max. He insisted. I bet it's got to do with the Max Factor. Anywho, I've only heard whispers of this cartoon before, but I do like the 90s, so I decided I'd be the outsider who reviewed this show with no nostalgia back behind it. I mean, how bad can it be with a main character named Max? Also, this theme song kicks ass. Hell yeah! Let's get into this shit! In 1992, the Mighty Max toy line was released by Bluebird Toys. There were small play sets with a horror theme to them. They had mini figurines of menacing creatures and a little boy named Max who had a baseball cap and a shirt with the letter M on it. You could tell this kid was hip with a capital ch-ch-cha at the end. After that, there was a tie-in TV series and an SNES game. My sources tell me that the game sucks real bad, so let's just talk about the TV series instead. I couldn't actually find a whole lot about the production of this show. I just know that it was a way to sell toys, and the toys were way more popular than the show itself. And that's a bad omen. Well, I'll never know if I like the show unless I watch it. Let's go! Alright, so I guess we're gonna start off by watching the first episode, which is gonna set up the series. A bellwether in one's cap. Sure.
Swallow. Chew. Eat me all.
Uh-oh, they slipped Vore into this children's cartoon. Actually, no, it's just this evil-looking guy who wants to be unleashed into the world, but can't for whatever reason. Meanwhile, we're shown Max's house, and he's voiced by Rob Paulsen, the guy who voiced Pinky from Pinky and the Brain, Carl from Jimmy Neutron, and the mask in his cartoon. I'm pretty stoked that he's here, actually. I like his voice. Anyways, looks like Max is a rich kid who lives in a big house, and people mail him treasure chests. Well, actually, inside that treasure chest isn't copious amounts of gold, it's a small statue with Egyptian hieroglyphics on it. Apparently, Max was chosen to be the cap bearer. What? Max breaks the statue and there's a cap inside. What? And then Max puts on the cap and it lets him create portals to travel across space and time. Of course. Yes. Confuse me early so I won't ask questions later. Okay, back to the plot. The bad guy from earlier notices Max putting on the cap and sends one of his badniks to go get Max, since, as it turns out, Max is the chosen one to defeat this guy. So Max goes to the mini-mart like he was told to, but this lava monster is waiting for him.
Get out of here, Max!
Did that guy just fucking die? It feels like that guy just got fucking melted to death. Oh, whatever! Cue the guitar music! Max tries to make a getaway on his bike until he's about to hit a wall, so he manages to summon one of his portals and uses it to escape. Alright then. So when Max enters the portal from the other side, he meets Virgil and Norman. Virgil is the fowl who summoned him, and Norman is Max's new Viking bodyguard. They go to Max's secret basement, which leads Max to Skull Mountain. So you know, Max doesn't want to go in there. But Virgil! Look out! Virgil! Now it looks like Max has to go after Virgil to save him, considering he's the chosen one and all. The second they get there, Norman gets ganged up on by some rock monsters, which leaves Max alone with Skullmaster. Some bodyguard. Anyways, it's here that I recognize Skullmaster's voice as Tim Curry, and this cartoon just got way better. For those unaware, Curry has played Nigel Thornberry, Wadsworth, Pennywise, and don't forget, Drake the Penguin!
Don't make me laugh. Or slap my knee.
Basically, this guy's a legend. Back to the story. Max runs away from Tim Curry and finds Virgil. He rescues him, finds Norman, helps him out, and they try to escape, but they run into Skullmaster again. So Max just climbs up onto one of these digging machines, while Skullmaster just watches, and Max just runs him down, presumably crushing Tim Curry. But oh no! He's not dead! Max escapes through a portal, leaving Skullmaster to fall into a pit of lava. Now he's gotta be dead, for sure. Well, he isn't. But he's defeated for now, so the episode can end. Or it would if Max didn't have something to tell me about geography! Was this your hidden agenda all along, Max? Was this just an excuse to teach me about geography? Well anyways, this leads into the whole series, wherein which Max usually has to do battle with Skullmaster's minions, although sometimes Max just fights independent villains who aren't even related. All the while, he travels to different locations on Earth. Also, one time, in Souls of the Talon, they traveled to an astral plane. It was all good and fun, but eventually, the series had to end. And I kind of want to talk about the series finale. Not in depth like I just did, but just for a quick overview. You guys know I wouldn't talk about this if it weren't for a reason. So anyways, after the series has had its shenanigans, Skullmaster finally reforges the Crystal of Souls, and he's out to get Max. Evil has summoned all across the Earth, and there's nowhere to hide. Throughout the entire episode, Virgil and Norman seem to be dreading something that's been prophesied to happen. It's only when we make it to a giant spider that we figure out what it is. As it turns out, Norman was prophesied to die to the spider, and despite Max's best efforts, Norman is killed. We then figure out that Virgil's prophesied to die at Stonehenge. And that happens. Max's two friends who have been helping him along this journey are killed right in front of him. Even though the show was relatively dark compared to other kids' shows, I didn't expect this kind of thing from it. Although, of course, they don't stay dead. Max winds up using time travel to return to the very first episode. Once there, he claims that this time he's really gonna kick some Skullmaster butt. That's it. We don't really see him defeat Skullmaster, and while they're still alive, we don't actually get to see Virgil or Norman again after their deaths. I guess they'd lose their budget or something. God damn it. Well, anyways, the overall concept for Mighty Max, while a bit confusing, is actually pretty good, and it leads to a lot of pretty cool adventures. Plus, the main story of this series isn't half bad either, and was surprisingly dark for a kid's show. I gotta give it props for that. It's way better than I was expecting, honestly. So, a decently high score of 14 out of 20 is granted. Now we have to get into the characters for this show. There's actually quite a few, so I'm just gonna narrow it down to the main four, starting with Max. Mighty Max himself is played by Rob Paulsen, as I mentioned. He often cracks jokes and acts like a kid would, although there actually are plenty of moments where he's serious and proves to be pretty heroic, often stepping in to save his friends even though he has to put his life on the line. Max is good at heart, and is actually a pretty fun protagonist. Probably helps that he's voiced by Yakko. Virgil is voiced by Tony Jay, and is basically the wise man of the group. He's over 10,000 years old and knows a lot about the past and the future. Virgil was pretty good, although less memorable than Max and Norman. Speaking of which, Norman is played by Richard Mole. Norman is an immortal warrior who acts as Max's bodyguard. Norman is often the guy doing the fighting in the show whenever it's needed, and it's needed a lot apparently. Due to living for thousands of years, Norman has gained a reputation throughout history. Apparently, there was no Sir Lancelot, and there was no Thor. It was just Norman using different names. Sure, why not? Lastly, we've got Skullmaster, the main villain played by Tim Curry. Skullmaster, to my surprise, was a pretty intimidating villain, all things considered. He simply wanted to rule over everything, including time itself, so that even in the past, people would have been slaves to him. I feel like that would cause a time paradox. Where's Doc Brown when you need him? Well, anyways, Skullmaster is often making violent threats towards Max, a kid. So yeah, no morals on this guy. Even being played by Tim Curry doesn't help make him less intimidating. In fact, it might even make him more intimidating. Overall, an effective villain. Basically, I like the cast of characters here. While none of them strike me as amazing or anything, they were good enough to keep the story going along quite nicely, and were pretty fun to watch. I feel like I can give these characters a solid score of 12 out of 20. The music in this series is actually pretty awesome. Usually, there's some pretty cool guitar music playing in the background, which I really wound up liking. Also, of course, it's got a pretty rocking theme song. Also, in the 90s, a good theme song was to be expected. Anyways, the background music sets the mood for the show pretty well, I think. Even if it's nothing I'd listen to while not watching the show. So I guess I can give it another decent score of 12 out of 20. I think for a kid's cartoon, even though it's surprisingly violent, it's nothing that a kid can't handle. The series is actually a pretty cool show for children and potentially adults? Actually, scratch that. I just pictured a grown man sitting down alone and watching Mighty Max, and it was weird. Alright, well, for kids this is very good. The plots are more mature than other kids' shows, but you still got humor spread throughout. Whether you think it's good humor is a matter of opinion, but to each their own, I guess. Anyways, this is a good one to watch, in the same vein as Gargoyles, I suppose, what with it being more grown up. Also, I really shouldn't be comparing Mighty Max to something like Gargoyles. It's not that good, it's just good. 14 out of 20. No? Well, look, I only know about this show because my friend told me about it. but I don't think that's really a mark against the show. This is stupid. Hey, actually, can we remove this category? I hate this one. Okay. Okay, nice. Okay. Alright, guys, let's wrap this up. Overall, Mighty Max was surprisingly fun for a kid show anyways. I was caught off guard by how dark it could be, but I like that kind of stuff. The characters were pretty good, especially the main villain Skullmaster, and the stories were usually pretty interesting. It's just overall a nice time if you're looking for a good 90s cartoon. I guess my final score of 52 out of 80. Yeah, not out of 100 or anything, because I removed the memorable category. But come on, 80's a good number, right? Your silence says yes. Anyways, that's all the time we have for today, fellas. Bye-bye.